Welcome to the Blackhawks Breakaway podcast for CHSN with Charlie Romeliotis. I am Pat Boyle. We are brought to you by Toyota. Toyota has more all-wheel drive and four-wheel drive vehicles than any other brand. Find yours and shine on Toyota. Let's go places. Charlie, Hawks win back-to-back games for the first time this season, and what a weekend it was. We had the bizarro world in Los Angeles on Saturday where the Hawks were absolutely brutal for two periods. They battled back in the third from a 2-goal deficit and a 1-goal deficit, get the equalizer with 31 seconds to go, and then win it in the shootout with all three shooters scoring. And then a more complete performance in Anaheim on Sunday to finish the road trip 3-2. What was your takeaway from this weekend in Cali?
Well, it was funny because the last time we did a podcast, it was coming off that disappointing loss in San Jose, where you look at the Blackhawks win over Colorado, then they can't follow it up with a win against the lowly Sharks. And you're thinking, man, is this who the Blackhawks are this season? Are they not going to be able to string together some wins again? Is it going to be this roller coaster ride of them having great starts, bad finishes, or bad starts and good finishes? And in some way, it felt like a course correction against LA, where in the third period against San Jose, they just peppered everything onto the net against the Sharks, and they somehow did not break through. Then against LA, they have 8 shots on goal total through the first 40 minutes. And you're just like, well, this is definitely not a game the Blackhawks are going to have any chance of winning because they're trailing by multi-goals. And they end up scoring 3 in the third period, somehow find a way to win in the shootout as well, because they went 3 for 3. Bedard, Teravainen, and Donato with the sweet shootout winner. But after that win, it was like, okay, this win is meaningless if they can't go follow this up and beat the Anaheim Ducks, right? And so the first 8 to 10 minutes had me a little worried. I think the Hawks were being outshot 13-3 at one point against the Ducks. Arvid Soder, he was absolutely terrific. We'll get to him in a sec. But the way they were able to put together at least a strong final 45 minutes of hockey or 50 minutes of hockey, however you look at it. I shouldn't say strong, because still scoring chances were definitely tilted in Anaheim's favor. But at no point did the Blackhawks really feel like they were totally out of control or out of sync. It was leaning on a good goaltender, and it was finding a way to win a hockey game even when they weren't at their best. And that's exactly what they did against LA too. We've talked about it last year and even in years past, how if the Blackhawks haven't been playing their A game, it's really hard for them to win with their B game. And it was nice to see the Blackhawks beat LA and Anaheim with their B game for once, because typically they haven't been able to do that.
LA was their D- game for 40
minutes.
Yeah,
you're right. Touche.
That was not their B game.
I guess I was saying a non-A game.
Right. Yeah. It was nowhere near an A. Yeah. And I hope they learn from that. I hope they really, I think you framed it well. There are games this season where they deserved a better fate and lost. And there are games where they deserved to lose, like in Los Angeles on Saturday. If Mrazek doesn't keep them in, and it just seems like LA, even though they had that 2-goal lead through 40, it could have been 4 or 5-0. But, Mrazek made some big saves at key opportunities, and they just stayed in it. And then their captain, Nick Foligno, gets in the fight at the end of the first period. I didn't see everybody jump in the second and get them going, but he got them going in the third period with his goal. And then it was Craig Smith on a beautiful play from Reichel, who again keeps showing flashes and keeps getting more ice time. He got significant ice time in that Saturday game where it took away ice time from someone like Teuvo Teravainen.
Yeah, he had 15 plus of ice time in the game, and I think before that LA game, his high of the season was 12 minutes. So that was a substantial increase in ice time for Lucas Reichel. And, just looking at my takeaway too, Pat, last year, the Hawks won only 7 games on the road all season. They're already at 4 this year. So they've become they're finding ways to win hockey games when they're clearly not at their best. Just seeing on the road trip, the Colorado win was impressive, but just looking at them on they're 4-4-1 on the road this season. And 4-4-1 on the road this season. They didn't have any road success last year. So that is also encouraging. Now, hopefully they can carry that into home ice advantage too. And you don't want to see the home ice record dip, but finding ways to win against decent hockey teams when they're not at their best, I think is a sign of maturity. Has it looked perfect? Absolutely not. But it's rarely going to look perfect, even for the elite teams. Like sometimes it's just, oh, hey, the Edmonton Oilers won a hockey game being outshot 40-20, but Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl strapped the team on their back and found a way to power through. So it's what you want to see with the Blackhawks too, just finding ways to win, even if it's scrappy and doesn't look pretty.
Well, they better win on the road because that's the only place they play. 12 of their first 18 are away from the United Center. I'll get into the schedule later on because this schedule has been absolute, and it's even more insane going forward. So I'll get into that coming up a little bit later on. I want to talk about special teams on Sunday. Hawks were 2 for 2 on the power play. They killed off 4 of 5 power plays by the Ducks. I liked what I saw, the Taylor Hall no-look pass to Teuvo Teravainen for the first power play goal. Probably Taylor Hall's best game as a Blackhawk, would you say?
Yeah, definitely right up there. He was noticeable all night.
And then I liked the power play goal for Seth Jones. It starts with a good keep. The Blackhawks get control of it. Good movement, rotation. I want to see Connor Bedard at that top of the umbrella more than I have seen him so far this season. I think he's your biggest threat as far as getting a shot through from the point because he's got the best vision and he can change angles, and the PK has to respect that. He's also your best passer. He put that right in Seth's wheelhouse. We saw Seth, cocked and loaded and ready to one-time it. Would you like to see Connor, rotate more and be in that top of that umbrella position on the power play to take advantage of his shot and his passing?
Yeah, it's a good observation. And I've actually been, I watch Detroit Red Wings occasionally just to see Patrick Kane and continue to watch him. And Detroit has been doing something similar where Moritz Seider runs the point at the top, but they've started to have a little bit more power play success where Patrick Kane has actually been more at the point, like he'll rotate. And Kane has actually scored a couple goals, or there have been redirections because Kane is getting shots through from the point. So it's nice to see. It was to see the Blackhawks go into that a little bit where Bedard goes to the top. He tees up Seth Jones. It was kind of funny the way it happened, Pat, because we've been talking about how Seth Jones at the beginning of last season changed the flex number on his stick to go into more of a whippier stick because he's going to be taking less slap shots because he wants more quick ones. And this one was an absolute missile of a one-timer on a 10-bell clapper. So good to see that the flex hasn't changed the speed on that slap shot. And it was nice to see Blackhawks break through on the power play as a whole, because prior to Sunday's game against Anaheim, the Hawks were 2 for 22 on the power play over their over their previous 7 games. And so it was nice to see them have a multiple power play goal performance against Anaheim. It was the 3rd time this season the Hawks have scored multiple power play goals in the same game. I think they only did that 5 times last year. So they're already more than halfway of the number than last year. And then, like you mentioned, Pat, the penalty kill, the Hawks were about to go. They had given up a power play goal in 6 consecutive games going into Anaheim, and they were 4 for 4. And then Anaheim has that late power play in the 3rd period, score with 4 seconds left. And so the Hawks have now technically given up a power play goal in 7 consecutive games after a really strong start on the penalty kill for the Blackhawks earlier this season. But I still think that was a terrific performance by the special teams as a whole, power play and penalty kill, and hopefully for the Blackhawks' sake, they can get back on track and build off that moving forward.
All right, so the biggest surprise on the young season is Ryan Donato. His team-leading 7th goal he scored in Anaheim. Is he going to have 50 by the end of the year? I mean, are we just going to be watching him among the league leaders with Cole Caulfield and company?
Hang on, I'm going to do this in real time. Elite prospects typically will project the pace of the goal pay for players. And so I think Ryan Donato, he is now on a 51 goal pace, 66 points. So I will hammer the over. No, I'm kidding. He's never had 26 in a season. Or is it 20? No, 16. Never had more than 16. Yeah.
Well, I mean, look, I looked at like yesterday's goal in Anaheim. That it could have gone maybe to Bedard. Like, I mean, it was a scrum. He's finding the puck is finding him. He's finding the puck. I'm not gonna not give him his due. He's been fantastic. And then how about the pass he had to Tyler Bertuzzi to set up the equalizer in Los Angeles, and then the deke he had to seal the shootout win. I mean, Tony Granato coached him in the 2018 Olympics, and he's a hard worker. He's like, I didn't see that kind of skill, that dangling, that stick handling for Team USA.
Well, it's funny because a lot of people were drawing the conclusions of the Blackhawks picking up some moves from Patrick Kane in the shootout, because Bedard was the first guy to go, and he pumps the brakes just like Patrick Kane does, goes 5-hole, and then Donato with his game winner. It kind of looked like the one that he had against Marc-Andre Fleury against Pittsburgh, like way back, where he has this incredible deke. And so Donato has been unbelievable, and credit to Luke Richardson for kind of riding the hot hand and moving Donato from the 3rd line to the 1st line. Also put him on the top power play unit. He's out there for 3-on-3 overtime. He's out there for the shootout. Like, here's what I will say. My only concern about giving him even more ice time is that he's not the fleetest of foot. He uses a lot of energy skating, and he plays a grindy style. Giving him more ice time could potentially impact his ability to be impactful on a shift-to-shift basis versus he continues to play on the 3rd line. He's fresh, he's energized, and so that would be my only concern. But last games, it's worked. They've put him on the top power play unit. They put him on the 1st line. He's been out there in some key situations, extra attacker, like you mentioned, and he's getting rewarded for it, and so are the Blackhawks. It's paying off.
I mean, I know he's riding the hot hand, and that's why he was bumped to Bedard's line, and you had to do something. Do you see his skill set as the missing ingredient on that line? Does he give a 98 more time and space? Is he a puck retriever enough to help out that group?
Well, it's weird because even I think back to last season, I think Donato played a little bit with Connor Bedard towards the beginning of the season. And if you look at their underlying numbers, they're actually pretty good with Donato on the line. So I'm not sure if this is an aberration or if this is hey, this actually does help Connor focus on his game. He can create. I think the important part is if you have that guy on the line like a Ryan Donato or a Nick Foligno or down the road, potentially a Tyler Bertuzzi, you have to make sure that the other guy on the wing, whether it's Kurashev or Teravainen, has to be able to play with Bedard on like a thinking level and like an offensively skilled level. So I don't think, if they get away from Donato, like I think having a guy like him that can retrieve pucks and be like that pest works. But you have to make sure that Connor also has that other skillful player that he can play with on a line. But so far it's working. Long term, I don't know if it's going to work, but keep riding the hot hand.
So let's move on to Bedard and 3 primary assists in Anaheim. He wanted no part of discussing his 3 assists. He he wants to pump pucks in the back of the net, and I get it. He had 2 breakaways in Anaheim. He had an unbelievable dangle in Los Angeles in overtime, 3-on-3 hockey on Saturday that I thought he was going to break through there. He has had, over the last 72 hours, some of the best looks he's had all season, Charlie.
Yeah, he's definitely been snake bit a little bit. And my concern level for him is 0 because he's the kind of goal scorer that is, once he does break through, the floodgates are probably open where he's going to go on a run where it's like, oh, he's got 5 goals in 4 games, or, he's got a couple goals in a game. But for him, he holds himself to such a high standard that while he did get 3 assists, he also prides himself on scoring goals, and he wants to make sure that he's contributing in that department because it is hard to score in the NHL. And so I think, he has 3 goals on the season. And so I think I was looking at Money Puck just to see what his expected goals are. And his expected goals this season are 4.3. Actual goals are 3. So he hasn't gotten some puck luck. So there is some sort of correction coming. And usually you see the players are always above, like their actual goals are always above their expected just because they're goal scorers and they find ways to put the puck in the back of the net, even when when they shouldn't be goals. So I wouldn't be surprised if we're looking at the end of the season where Connor's like 30 goals and his expected are like 25 because he's just a natural goal scorer and he's eventually going to find a way to finish the chances that he has been getting. We always say, Pat, too, you get more concerned if the chances stop coming, right? So like he's been putting himself in situations where he's getting grade A chances. Over time, those are going to fall for him.
Yeah. And I think, like you said, once he gets a couple, it's going to be a streak that he pumps in, 4 in 6 games or 5 in 8 games, something like that, and gets things going. So hopefully that will take place sooner rather than later. I'm still puzzled by those first 2 periods in LA, and I this team, I still don't understand why time and again we talk about these lapses in play. You hear Luke talk about it, you hear Nick Foligno talk about it, you hear the leadership core talk about it. And yet, time and again, we seem to be mentioning on this podcast, on your post-game show, my post-game show, if it wasn't for the first 10 minutes of this period, and I know other teams go through lulls and no one plays, perfectly complete 60-minute efforts every single night. But this team, the margin for error, like you said earlier, is when they don't bring their A game or their at least B+ game, they can be out of it in quick fashion. The good news is they have kept it within striking distance. There was the stats going into Los Angeles where, 9 of the 11 games, and now it's like 11 of the 12 or 10 of 12 where they've had the lead. They've been tied or trailed by 1 goal in the third. So the good news is they haven't had lapses that have completely taken them out of games like we saw last year.
Right. Yeah, last year it feels like those lulls were longer and the goals with those lapses were more. It was like, oh, the Hawks gave up 3 goals in the second period. Versus now, it's like you can look at certain periods or stretches of the game, and it's like, well, the Hawks weren't great in that second period, but they only gave up a goal. Like they're still in it, and I think that in some way is progress. I think the frustration for me is more when those slow starts come against teams that are very clearly they're in the Blackhawks ballpark. Like against Anaheim, it's inexcusable Granted, second of a back-to-back, long road trip. So I guess I get it from that standpoint. But against a team like Anaheim or San Jose, like you shouldn't be having those bad starts. Like you should be the team that's hitting the ice saying, no, we're going to dictate the pace of play tonight. But if you face a team like Edmonton or Colorado or LA or Winnipeg and you have a tough start, it's more understandable because it's like, okay, those teams are really good. And even if you bring some energy out of the gate, they have the skill to compete and to maybe kind of power through whatever energy the Blackhawks are bringing. So that's part where it's like, okay, a little understandable. But against teams like San Jose, Anaheim, they have to have mentality in every game. They should, but mostly against the teams that are very clearly within their ballpark. They shouldn't be the team waiting for the opponent to dictate pace of play. They should say, hey, let's be the ones that let's set the tone on our terms and then filter the rest of the game through there.
Goaltending has been great for the Hawks. Peter Mrazek has, carried the load, 6 straight starts after Saturday's performance. And then Arvid Soderblom, who had not been in the net, in the crease since October 19th. And I don't know what you expected going in, but I expected some rust. He was tested early in that game. Like when you said it was 11-1 or 10-1 shots on goal. It was after that penalty kill that the Hawks kind of built upon that in that first period in Anaheim. And Soderblom was fantastic. He got the chain last night as the players awarded him as the best player.
Deservedly so, because I thought there would be some sort of rust, and maybe getting that action right out of the gate kind of helped him in some way. Versus if you're just sitting there, haven't faced a shot in 5 minutes, you have a lot of time to think. Now we talk about the Blackhawks getting off to better starts, and so I guess you don't want that. Arvid is taking too many shots right out of the gate, but he faced so many of those shots were high quality chances. And Natural Stat Trick yesterday had the goals above the expected goals for Anaheim at 5.67, which means Arvid Soderblom stopped 3.67 goals above expected. That is like elite stuff, like potential goaltending performance of the season kind of stuff. And he's been awesome too. Like you look at his 3 starts this season, 88 saves on 95 shots for a save percentage of 926. Like last year, he was in the 880s of save percentage. And, poor Arvid too. I can't remember the top of my head, but I think he has played in 55 games with the Blackhawks now. And prior to the Anaheim game, he had only 7 wins to show for it. And a lot of those games, the Blackhawks did not give him any offensive support. Like, I remember doing a story on him at the beginning of last season where I went through like his first 30 games in the NHL with the Blackhawks, and of the 30 starts that Arvid Soderblom had made, it was like the Blackhawks goals per game average was like 1.9. It was like so low. It's like this poor kid, not only does he have to feel like he's got to be on his A game all the time, but he is just getting no run support at all. So it's nice to see the Blackhawks put up a 4 spot for him, give him a little bit of a cushion, and then for Soderblom to perform the way that he did, especially how difficult last year was for him, very encouraging to see.
So they got another back-to-back this week, a crazy schedule, come home from a 5-game road trip. They play 1 game Wednesday against Detroit, and they're back in Dallas on Thursday. They come back for Sunday's game against Minnesota, and then they're right back out on the road. Let's do the West Coast for the 3rd time in a month. Let's check in on Seattle and Vancouver, shall we? What the hell is going on with this schedule, Charlie?
Okay, so I have some sort of explanation for this.
Please.
I believe. So I can't defend the Hawks having a home game on Wednesday, then going back to Dallas again, where they just were. That part is just like, okay, can they, can we do a little bit better job of maybe spacing those out? But NHL teams can put in requests with the NHL, and a lot of the Blackhawks specifically like to backload their home games because they don't want to compete with the NFL season. So that's why the Blackhawks typically start on the road for a majority of the last however many years. The Hawks have started on a 3-4 game road trip, and a lot of their road trips are in the months of October and November. Because you look at the schedule in December, January, February, Hawks are loaded with home games. And so I think the Blackhawks like it that way. The problem is that the road trips in general have been, sometimes they're kind of like all over the map. And so like Nick Foligno had mentioned it earlier in the season, like, what is going on here? Like, this schedule is crazy. Like, I've never been a part of something like this. So from that perspective, I get it for the player, but I think the Blackhawks actually like loading up the home games after October. They don't compete with the NFL.
I don't hate that, but not all road trips are equal. And being in the West, especially if you're a Central Time Zone team, stinks. It absolutely stinks. The only team that does more traveling is Nashville. I would love, and I know this probably will never happen, but I would love for realignment to put the Hawks in the East. That would, because all of a sudden these trips are not outrageous. I mean, when you're in the East, you are within an hour of pretty much all of your foes except the Florida teams. You can, and it's that times 82 makes a huge difference. My biggest thing is I feel like we're in the Pacific Division with as many times as we've been on the West Coast in a month. Like, it's crazy. So let's talk about who's coming to town on Wednesday. The hated Detroit Red Wings, and 88 Patty Kane, last time there, epic game, epic finish. Stole the spotlight a bit from Chris Chelios as his jersey was retired that day. It's always, I don't know how we'll ever top that one. Like, that was surreal to see him win it and then see 19 plus 20,000 fans who usually hate that team, like that team, and like him. They didn't like the team. They liked him. And so they gave him quite the Showtime greeting. I'm excited. Should be fun. That'll be a nationally televised game on TNT Wednesday.
Yeah, I'm excited to see Patrick Kane come into town and see what part 2 is going to present. And we'll say this, I'm very curious to see just Detroit in general. I mean, that team has not been a good hockey team this season. I know their record is 500, like they're 5-1, but their goal differential is -6, and a lot of their underlying numbers are poor. Like, they're 32nd, dead last in shots on goal per game. They've allowed the second most shots on goal per game at 34.1. They're 31st in 5-on-5 scoring for and against percentage, and they're 20th in penalty kill. Like, these are and 2 of their wins this year, Pat. They beat the Islanders 1-0. I think a week and a half ago. They had only 10 shots on goal. 10 shots, and then one of their wins was against Nashville. Like, when Nashville hadn't won a game yet, they won 5-2, and they were the Wings were outshot 39-22. So, like, Detroit is reeling, and I wouldn't be surprised if there's a potential coaching change there. Like, if that's the first domino to fall. But Patrick Kane, he got off to a slow start. He's typically historically a slow starter. Like, you look at his October numbers, and they're always really low in the point total. And November rolls around, and I think November is, like, historically Patrick Kane's best month, like, in his career. So he's starting to heat up a little bit. Has been a point per game over the last, I think, 7 games. He's got 7 points in his last 7 contests. But excited to see Patrick Kane back in Chicago. It won't be the second of a back-to-back. Like, he'll get a morning skate. He'll be able to kind of, he'll get the attention from the morning skate availability and be able to kind of soak it in, unlike last time where it was like a quick trip to Chicago and get out right away. Yeah,
it's and he usually rises to the magnitude of the night. So, I think back to when he and and Austin Matthews squared off on a Sunday night. And I think he will take this opportunity to put his best skate forward. Yeah. And I think Connor will as well. If you had a little wager to see who would register more points on Wednesday night, you taking Bedard or Kane?
I will take whatever Connor Bedard's shot total is, the over-under. I'm hammering the over because I think he is going to want to pepper as many shots on goal. And also,
right, so
remember
let's
year,
set the line. Let's set the line. I'll say the line is 4.5.
Over. I'm taking over in the shots because
How many
the Wings
times
give
do you
up
think
the
he's
most.
had 5 or more shots this year? I don't think it's been that many times. Maybe twice.
I'm not sure, but he might have 10 shots on goal on Wednesday because Detroit gives up a boatload of shots.
All right. I would
also
start.
Remember? Yeah.
I was just going to say I would start Mrazek against his old team on Wednesday, and I would put Sodi in on Thursday in Dallas.
That's fair. I was going to say, do you remember last year when the Wings and Blackhawks squared off? Connor Bedard laid a big hit on Patrick Kane too. Yeah. So he was not shy of like being respectful of in any way. Connor wanted to flex his muscles and kind of show, new sheriff in town kind of thing. And Kane had a great laugh about it afterwards too, saying he was going to come after him or something. So it was a fun battle between the two, but hopefully we get another part 2 and maybe Chicago wins it this time. Any
other things that we haven't covered that you want to jump on here before we exit?
I think we're good. Yeah. It's funny that we did the last podcast and we're like, oh, they're reverting back to old habits. And now I was looking at the NHL points percentage in the Western Conference. The Blackhawks are tied for 11th in points percentage now. So it's like that's about where I think I had them. Like, but not near the 8, not near 16, somewhere in the middle. So it feels like water is finding its level again with the Blackhawks.
Yeah, they're 5-7-1. Getting to 500 would mean a lot to this team. And especially with how things started, they could hover around that 500 for a while. I think it would not only give the team confidence, but it would also give the fan base some confidence that this rebuild is continuing on its upward trajectory. Again, we got to keep an eye on what's going on in Rockford, and in juniors and in the NCAA collegiate ranks, because there's a lot of Hawks prospects that are putting up some sick numbers right now. And you can't lose sight of that either.
Yeah. And it should be noted over the weekend on the top pairing for Rockford was Kevin Korchinski and Artem Levshinov. So it was a potential future for the Blackhawks. They were paired together. Rockford didn't have the best night on Sunday. So that was a little bit of a tough night. But I think the excitement of finally seeing what could be NHL down the road, you're just like, oh, wow. It was just weird seeing Korchinski, Levshinov on the same pairing. It was like, oh, wow, that's the potential future of the Blackhawks in a couple of years.
It was nice to see Isaac Phillips get on the score sheet again and Nolan Allen out there. I like the changes that have been made. Vlasic and Murphy, Kaiser and Jones. I think that's worked out really well for the Hawks the last few games.
Totally agree. Specifically, I think it brought out the best in Jones. I Kaiser has this. He's such a stabilizing presence. Like he plays a simple, predictable game, not flashy, but just like what you're going to get out of Kaiser. And I think that's allowed Seth to play a little bit more freely. And I agree. Like they should continue to roll with these pairings. Good to see Isaac Phillips get on the score sheet because he's had a start to the season just not knowing where he's going to play. And he's one of the nicest guys in the Blackhawks locker room. Just a quick personal story. When I came into training camp after it had been announced that I was joining WGN to be the Blackhawks studio host, he literally prompted came up to me and said, "Hey, congrats on the new gig." Like didn't even know he had known about it or whatever, but I guess he had heard about it somehow. And he was the first guy to come up and say congratulations. So Isaac, really good kid, good head on his shoulders. I've had conversations with him about how he's handling this all the last month and a half, like just being put on waivers, not knowing what's next. And he was just like, had a smile on his face and was just like, I'm just staying ready for my opportunity wherever, whenever, and wherever that comes. So good to see him get on the score sheet. Absolute wicked shot, by the way. Like, did not know he had that in his arsenal.
So hopefully the back end can continue to help inject some offense into this team and keeping the puck out of the net as well. That is going to do it for the Blackhawks Breakaway podcast for CHS. And for Charlie Romeliotis, I'm Pat Boyle. Thank you for watching and listening.